Hey, multi-fan day. I actually just did a fan fiction reading, so now it's like 2 o'clock, but it made no sense. So I'm gonna be stupid and do another one. Okay, this is called The Story. It's pretty goddamn generic. Oh wait, no. It's called either The Story or Hearts and Mail Day. I'm not sure which. This is by Eternity Glacier. Yes, Monday. Featherfoot Featherfoot got up out of his bed in Cloudsdale. He could not sleep at all last night. His sky-blue mane frizzled beyond belief, his wings feathers ruffled, and his coat a bit darker. He kept dreaming of the same thing, his mare friend Rosebud leaving him. He just could not get enough sleep to get ready for weather patrol each day. He groggily got out of his bed and trotted over to his window. He opened the cloud-lined window and stared down to the ground below, seeing the commotion of everyday life go on. He then looked to his calendar. He let out a sigh. Another Hearts and Hooves day this Friday, without a mare to celebrate it with. He flopped back onto his bed and proceeded to shed a tear. A tear dripped off his cheek and fell through the cloud to the ground below. He just lay there, not doing anything, letting the tears roll along his face. Wow, lonely guy. Something then hit his window. He got a bit of a spook from it, but when he regained his composure, he hurried to the window he was just at. He pressed up against the panes. It was Pressed up against the panes was the local mail mare, Derpy. He just looked for a moment before the wall-eyed mail pony knocked on the window, asking for it to be opened. Feather did just that, and Derpy made a less than perfect landing, falling onto the floor. She got up and handed him a letter from his parents in Las Pegasus. Hey, Las Pegasus, that was in the most recent episode, whatever. Thank you, Derpy. Here. He trooped over to his kitchen and pulled a muffin off the tray. He came back to her and gave her the muffin. Feather then read the letter. Dear Featherfoot, your father and I are going to be staying here in Las Pegasus. We've got a house here and we thought it would be a very great place. We promise we will visit you at least once a year. I'll send a picture of the house as soon I'll send a picture of the house we got soon. P.S. Your father was at the casino and I saw a cyan mare and a red stallion at the slots, and the mare won the jackpot twice. Can you believe it? P.S.S. Your father was not so lucky on the slots. With love, Mom. Well, looks like my folks found a new place to be, Feather announced. Derby smiled to him as she flew back out the window, realizing his full tray of muffins. She had something on her mind. Feather paid no mind to what she was planning, thinking her wall eyes told all. She headed off to make more deliveries. Feather then took a shower and flew out to perform his duties as weather patrol. 15 minutes later, Featherfoot arrived at his destination, the weather control station on the far side of Cloudsdale. He put on his headset and prepared to observe the weather pegasi that stayed in Cloudsdale. He realized there was a shortage after nearly all the pegasi left to disaster-proof the small village below. He sighed. Looks like my training was well worth it, he told himself, and as he and other weather con- as he and other weather control pegasi that remained in Cloudsdale prepared to change the weather. In a gust of wind they took off, ready to create the scheduled rainstorm. Some gathered up clouds, while others organized them into a sheet. Ready for the rain, they hit the top of each cloud, making them begin to produce drops of rain. They slapped high hooves and returned to the station. When they got back, they realized that they had spent 5 hours doing the entire routine. One of the weather ponies told Feather and the others, Dang, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. Another replied, We need those Pegasi back. With them, we got the routine done with 15 minutes. Feather then looked at the time and realized that they should be heading home. Well, my time here for the day is up. See you guys. See you Wednesday. He then headed out towards his Cloudsdale home. The sun was already setting, and he was tired and fatigued after a hard day's work. He made his way in through the front door, went up the cloud stairs to his bedroom, and jumped onto his bed, and fell asleep. Tuesday. Featherfoot got up from the bed after a hectic day of working. Monday. Who would guess that it would take 5 hours to get a normally 15-minute job done? Feather hopped out of bed, obviously sore from working yesterday. He trotted to the shower to wash up for the day ahead. When he finished, he put on a raincoat, since he knew the scheduled rain would last a full day to make up for Firehoof's little mistake of not preparing the clouds last week. He shook himself out of his thoughts, was trotting through the door, when Derpy once again came in through the window, falling to the floor once again, and carrying a letter for him. He trotted over and took it from the wall, and eyed the Pegasus mare. It was from his friend, Cloud Dasher. Featherfoot. Dude, you're not gonna believe this. I befriended a Wonderbolt. Can you believe it? I can't either. I'll be sure to come by sometime to tell you about it. Also, my friend Shadowbreeze and BB are the best. They want to see them too. Maybe you'd want to also. Later, Cloud Dasher. Feather had an expression of surprise and shock at what Cloud Dasher had said. He set the letter on the table, and he thanked Derpy again. He trotted out to the kitchen and took a muffin off the tray. He then trotted back out and gave it to her. She took it happily in her hoof. Thanks, she said with a smile. She stuffed the muffin in her mouth and trotted back to the window. Feather intervened before she could reach it, however. I think you might want to use the front door this time, he asked, worried for her safety. Derpy nodded and moved to the front door. Feather opened the door for her. She made her way out, and Feather closed the door slowly. He picked up a picture of him and Rosebud about a year ago. Rose, why did you have to leave me? He told himself. He then put the picture back on his table and headed out to see his friend Shadebolt. Shade's a Bodie. Shadebolt was just finishing preparing to leave to help the other Pegasi when he heard a knock on the door. Come in, he yelled to the pony that knocked, and then the door opened. Feather walked in. Hey, Shade, where you going? He asked his friend. Shade looked at him with a disappointed frown. Sorry, Feather. I have to help the rest of the Pegasi look around Equestria. If you haven't heard it yet, a pony down in the small village told the Pegasi to look around for anything that could cause a catastrophe. Feather looked at him like he was crazy. It's the truth. Twilight. 'Cause of, you get it. You get it. It's the truth. I heard it from Cloud. He said his new friend Jordan and his mare friend were leading the entire group. I see. So when do you think you'll be back? Feather asked Shade. I have no idea, but you'll know by visiting me, okay? With that, he made his way through the door and took off to parts unknown. Feather let out a sigh and headed back for home. Wednesday. Feather got up to the sound of a knock on his door. He got out of bed and trotted over to answer knocking. It was one of his friends at work. Hey, just to let you know, we have no work today. The station got a rainbow juice leak, so we have to take the day off, he told Feather. Okay, thanks for telling me, Feather replied, and the Pegasus took off. Feather closed the door and put on his flight goggles he wore on occasions. He reopened the door and took off. He felt the breeze through his light gray coat and sky-blue mane and tail. He was so sidetracked by the feeling that he slammed head-on into another pony. They both fell out of the sky, straight into the ever-free forest. Dun dun dun! 3 hours later. Featherfoot awoke on the ground of the forest. He searched around for the pony he had hit. Oh jeez, this is bad. If I can't find her... He turned a corner and saw who he hit lying on the ground, still breathing, in fact, sleeping. He galloped up to the form and recognized it. It was Derpy. Oh my Celestia, Derpy! Feather shouted. Derpy woke up, saw him, and pretended to be asleep. I think I know what to do. He started CPR on her, but she still feigned sleep, waiting for him to pull out a muffin. Waiting for him to pull out a muffin. He kept trying until he had got to mouth resuscitation. Until he did mouth to mouth, basically. He started and thought he was reviving her, but when he finished, she was still sleeping, though her mind was racing. He started to tear up. He then did what Derpy was waiting for. He pulled out a muffin, set it next to her, and ran off crying. She got up a moment later. She then looked at the muffin, then down at the path where Feather went. Feather? She said in any direction. She felt bad about what she did. She picked up the muffin and flew down the path that Feather took, only to be ambushed by 5 beings. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, it felt to him like hours, but he saw the edge of the forest. Feather was about to reach it, but he heard a scream come from deep in the forest. He tried to make a choice. Okay, on the one hoof, I go back to Cloudsdale and ignore my curiosity. On the other hoof, I save whatever screamed and risk my own life for what could just be a screeching animal. He contemplated his choices, but eventually his curiosity got the best of him, and he turned around and ran back into the forest. He reached a clearing in the forest and saw 5 cockatrices surrounding the once dead Derpy. Dead has, quotations, just so you know. She had her eyes shut. She had her eyes shut, making sure not to look directly at them, if it was possible. Feather gauged the possibilities. Okay, whether I rush up and ambush them and save Derpy, but potentially kill myself, or I leave her to them. On the second, the second thing I would never do. With that being said, he darted up to the scene and screamed at the 5 cockatrices. Get away from her! He attracted the attention of all 5 of them. They glared at him, trying to turn him into stone. He had his eyes closed the entire time, but eventually started to fight back. He flew into the air and darted at one of them. 4 of them chased him, while the last one went for Derpy, unbeknownst to Featherfoot. He did a sharp 180-degree turn and rammed all 4 of the cockatrices into the air and deeper into the forest. He then turned to Derpy, and she was slowly being turned to stone already, the 5th cockatrice glaring at her. He darted up and got between Derpy and the 5th cockatrice as fast as lightning. Derpy started turning back to normal, but noticed Featherfoot did not have the same fate, as he was staring right at the beast. His last words before he blacked out were, "Go now. Save yourself." Derpy did exactly that with tears in her eyes. She ran all the way out of the forest and flew into the air. Thursday. Derpy awoke from her sleep, dreaming about what happened the night before. She started to tear a bit. But why would he do that for me? She told herself. She got out of bed and prepared for the day ahead. She put on her mailbag and flew out the door, tears still in her eyes. He gave his life for me, she softly told herself as she flew to the post office. He must like me for something. She started tearing more. He was my muffin, she cried all the way to the post office. In the ever-free forest, the stone statue of what is Featherfoot stood in the middle of the clearing. A small hum came from the east. A pale yellow mare with a pink mane trotted into the clearing. She looked in the direction of Featherfoot. Oh, good. Some help looking for some veggies for Angel. She hovered closer to him and noticed something that shocked and enraged her. She saw the Pegasus pony petrified in stone. She went into an immediate rage, but kept it calm. Oh, little cockatrice, where are you? She cooed, hiding her anger. The cockatrice that petrified Featherfoot came out of hiding and flew right at her. It stopped when it realized who it was. Its stare changed to fear. Fluttershy then let out all her anger. I told you and your friends to stop petrifying ponies from then on, and you did it again. Not y- now you listen, mister. You will not do this again, or you will see the extent of my fury. Do you understand? She told the cockatrice with her stare. It then unpetrified Featherfoot and ran off. Fluttershy turned around and saw him. He trotted up to her. "Thank you. Um, I'm sorry. I have not seen you around here before," he told her. "I'm Fluttershy," she said timidly. "I have to thank you, Fluttershy, for freeing me from the stone. Now I have a mare to see." With that, he flew into the air and toward the post office. Meanwhile, Derpy had delivered her last letter of the day and was returning to the office to pick up her bits for the day. She was still depressed about what happened the previous day. She arrived at the post office and walked inside, tears on her face. The male stallion that was also working at that time took notice. "Hey, what's wrong, Derpy?" he asked her. My my muffin is." She was stopped by him. "I'm sorry, Derpy. I really am. Could you tell me what he was like, though, just to be sure?" He he had a sky blue mane and a light gray coat, and she was hold on. She was once again stopped by the male stallion, staring over to the far wall behind Derpy. She turned around and nearly burst into tears of joy. Her muffin came back. Featherfoot has returned. She burst into a full-on run and stopped in front of him. She then had confusion and relief in her wall-eyes. But how? Feather cut her off this time. "A mare named Fluttershy saved me in the forest. Apparently, she already had plans with a BB character," he told her. "She broke out in tears of joy, and so did he. Then they then hugged for as long as they could remember." Friday. Feather awoke in his own bed. He got out of it and recalled what happened yesterday. He smiled at the thought. Then he heard a knock on the window. He opened it, and Derpy flew in. This time, somehow, perfectly. She handed him a letter. This one was red envelope with a golden seal. He opened it. "Featherfoot, the past few days I thought I only liked you for your great baked goods. But now I know that you are more than that. You risked your own life to save me, even if I did a kind of trick when you woke up in the forest. Anyway, I would like to ask you one thing in return. Will you go to the Hearts and Hooves dance with me? Derpy." Featherfoot looked from the letter to Derpy. He saw a smile grow on her face. He then smiled, and burst into tears of joy. He wrapped his forelegs around her. "Yes, yes, I will." They both held each other for the longest time. Before long, they let go of each other and headed to the dance. At the dance? Every pony seems to be having a good time, Feather thought. He even saw two blank flanks dancing with a rainbow mare and a lavender unicorn. He turned to Derpy. "May I have this dance?" he asked, trying to act like a gentle colt. Derpy nodded, and then, as if by pure coincidence, a slow dance song started up. They then held each other while they danced, Featherfoot at least trying to make eye contact with the wall-eyed mare. Then they did the exact same thing. "I'm having a great time." With that, Derpy started getting closer to Feather. He knew her intentions and played along. Soon enough, they held each other in a kiss. Every pony stopped dancing and applauded the two. Their kissing felt like it was an eternity. Eventually, the two had to breathe at some point as they separated. Derpy took on a blush, with a smile. Feather did the same. Then the two got back to dancing, not wanting the night to end. Saturday. Derpy had opted to stay at Featherfoot's for the night. As they both woke up, they looked at each other. "How was your sleep?" they both asked at the same time. They turned away from each other, blushing. Feather then continued. "You first," he said, sporting a smile. Derpy returned it as she talked. "Anything for you, Muffin," she told him, and started telling him her dream about trotting in a muffin wonderland. When she finished it, it was Feather's turn. He told her about Rosebud, about how she broke up with him, and about how she broke up with him. As he started talking, he felt himself starting to shed a few tears, but Derpy put her hoof on his cheek. Feather turned to her, and she gave him a reassuring smile. He smiled back. He knew she would always be with him no matter what. He did not have to worry about the past anymore. He looked on to a future, one he looked forward to, knowing she was with him. Well, that was pretty cool. Ending was. I liked the dance part, but then it seemed to drop down a bit. And also the beginning. The beginning seemed unnecessarily long. I'm not sure what sort of character development was supposed to happen on Monday and Tuesday, but I missed it, evidently. All in all, pretty good.